MLB has an issue, and it stems from deep within the rules of the sport. And right now, throughout this offseason, the Dodgers are absolutely exposing it. From owners being cheap to low market teams not really having a fair chance to compete, to not having a deferred money limit, which avoids the luxury tax put in place to keep teams from spending as much as the Dodgers are in the first place, the MLB is in a weird spot just 2 seasons away from another potential lockout. And although I'm saying in the title this is a Dodgers issue, I don't really blame them whatsoever. They're putting a super team together and MLB completely allows it. However, the 29 other owners are to blame, as well as the MLB as a whole, and I will get into that in this video. Before we go any deeper, Roki Sasaki was signed by the Dodgers. He clearly chose to be a Dodger and joined 2 Japanese stars on the Dodgers in Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, as well as the Dodgers being one of the premier organizations in pitching development and obviously being a great market. However, the next day they also landed the best reliever on the market in Tanner Scott to a 4-year $72 million contract. And now the Dodgers are the single best team ever assembled on a baseball diamond. They have 5 true aces in Yamamoto, Ohtani, Blake Snell, Sasaki, and Tyler Glasnow, as well as a bullpen with 4 true closers in Tanner Scott, Michael Kopech, Blake Trinan, and Evan Phillips, and a lineup with Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Teoscar Hernandez, and Will Smith. It's an otherworldly baseball team, and it's one that is extremely hard to imagine losing throughout the season and not winning their second World Series in a row. Fortunately for the other 29 fan bases in MLB, the parity in baseball is unmatched compared to other sports, and it's uncommon for the World Series favorites to be the one holding up the trophy at the end of the season. However, the Dodgers are going to be the biggest favorites going into the season we've maybe ever seen. Tanner Scott is one that I'm currently struggling with as a baseball fan, because yes, that was a huge contract for a closing pitcher, as he is now the 3rd highest paid closer on a yearly rate and has one of the longest relief contracts we've ever seen. However, my issue is this is a move that every single baseball team could have offered if they wanted. Now, if we are being fair to the Dodgers and the other teams, since the Dodgers have built the greatest team ever, if every team offered Scott the same contract, he would have most likely chosen the Dodgers because of the team and market. However, every team could have also offered $2 million more per season to make it $20 million per season if they wanted, and if the MLB had a salary floor to stop owners from being pathetic and being like the Miami Marlins, who traded away Tanner Scott and are currently sitting at a payroll of just over $58 million, they might have had to pay Tanner Scott or someone else a little more money to keep him away from the Dodgers, while also actually contributing to spending to their baseball team. I'm going to start generalizing a little bit here, because obviously I don't own a baseball team and I don't know the exact percent of revenue sharing or how much goes to the owners or blah blah blah, but Forbes.com does a pretty basic breakdown of player expenses, operating income, and revenue. So if we do the math, we can see what these teams actually make, at least according to what Forbes says, which again isn't going to be perfect, but it's the best we can do as baseball fans. The Marlins had a $97 million payroll in 2024 according to SpotRack, but according to Forbes, they spent $132 million in player expenses. We'll live with the Forbes one just to keep it on the same track, but it is worth mentioning that SpotRack says that the current projected payroll for the Marlins in 2025 is only $58 million. But this is the closest we can get to the real numbers, because owners give us fans absolutely zero insight on what's happening financially other than the lies that I'll get into in a minute. We have to trust Forbes and assume it's close to the amount if we want any information on this subject, and since I'm making this video, I do want information on this subject. Either way, Forbes says that the Marlins made $295 million revenue in 2024, which is a $60 million increase from 2023. If the owner tries to tell you that he is financially unable to add to his payroll, he is lying to you. And I'm just going to be honest, I don't know where all of this profit goes. I'm sure it doesn't all go to the owner, but a fairly large chunk of it has to, or there would be no point in owning a baseball team. They're doing it for money. And we actually know this is true because the Athletics owner John Fisher was forced to spend after the other owners accepted a move to Las Vegas, and now he is completely comfortable overpaying on free agents, and it clearly doesn't seem like much of an issue after being cheap for years. I noticed that he's now not homeless begging for pennies on the side of the street because he signed Jose Leclerc to a $10 million contract. But if you listen to what Tom Ricketts, the owner of the Chicago Cubs, said last weekend, you'd think that's what would happen if he signed that contract to Leclerc. This is a quote from Ricketts about the Chicago Cubs fans that want them to spend more money. They think somehow we have all these dollars that the Dodgers have, or the Mets have, or the Yankees have, and we just keep it, which isn't true at all. What happens is we try to break even every year, and that's about it. Let's use Forbes again because it's our only real tool for this. The Cubs are in the third biggest American market in sports, which is Chicago, and sure, they share that market with the White Sox, but it's still a bigger market than every other city in MLB other than LA and New York, which, by the way, are also both shared markets in MLB. Now in 2024, there was a big increase with the Cubs' player salary rather than the Marlins, and that was $216 for the Chicago Cubs, and this is compared to the Marlins' $95. The Cubs also made $45 million more on operating income. So this quote feels fair, right? No. I already said that the Cubs are the third biggest market in baseball, which means more revenue, and in 2024, the Cubs made $506 million in revenue, which is more than the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Angels, and even the NLCS losers, New York Mets, who the owner of the Cubs just said that he can't keep up with. How can't you keep up with a team that made less money than you? It's impossible. You can, you just choose not. Whatever. To make this even more clear, let's look at something called the Scrooge Index, which shows how much revenue is then put back into the players. The Dodgers are second on the list, which is good to see at least. Sure, they make a huge amount of money, but they are spending more of that amount than 28 other baseball teams are. Other than the Mets, who literally don't care about money and run their baseball team unlike every other franchise. But if you look at the others in the top 15 highest percentages, you'll see some low market teams like the Rockies and the Brewers, but the Chicago Cubs, they're nowhere to be seen. Oh, there they are, sitting 20th on the second page in league revenue spent on player percentage, at only 43% of their revenue going back into the players. So clearly they have more money to spend if they wanted to. And I promise you, Ricketts is more than breaking even every single year, and he does so by tens of millions of dollars, if not more, every single year. Don't feel bad for these guys. By the way, he's worth $2.3 billion. Anyway, let's get back into the Dodgers because I feel like they need to be talked about just a little more. Clearly, I've kind of put this on the other owners, and I do truly think that they are the ones at the most fault here. But I also think MLB is at fault as well. I personally like no salary cap. It allows player payments to be unlimited, and I think that that's great for the league because players do more than anyone else, and I don't care what you say, I will always stand by that. No players, no league. But the salary floor, that's a different story. Right now, according to SpotRack, there are 9 teams sitting under $100 million in payroll in 2025, which feels like where the floor should be placed, maybe at like 120, I don't really know, but at least 100 million is where the floor should start. Every team can afford it, and if you can't, you should sell your baseball team because you shouldn't own one if you aren't wealthy enough to supplement your team with talent. You have hundreds of thousands and even millions of people counting on you to make your team at least good enough to show up and watch because you take their money. And if you aren't trying to win and you put a pathetic product on the field, you're being a loser and you don't deserve to run a baseball team because you're not doing what you're supposed to do with that team. You should not be taking money from middle-class people when you are a billionaire while not trying to give them a good product. That is a pathetic thing to do. If you think about that from any other business, it is pathetic. And I understand that MLB is a business, but it's different than other businesses, and it's not one that should be ran solely with the thought of money. It should also be run in a way that's trying to win baseball games. If you forced the Marlins to pay on a couple of free agents because they have to get to $100 million in payroll, they would have to overpay to get a Tanner Scott or a Luis Severino like we saw the Athletics do, because they have put their franchises in a terrible situation in the first place. This punishes the owners even more because now that they've been put in a bad situation, they need to spend even more money on these guys or they're going to lose draft picks or get fined. This is a double win in my opinion. This alone would keep more players away from the Dodgers and keep the league more fair and balanced for all the fan bases. There are also teams that are losing money on TV deals right now, and the Rays don't even have a stadium. And I get that side of it too, but you can still spend more than you are, especially the Tampa Bay Rays, because my goodness, they have made the playoffs a lot of years and they do not spend money. I do think deferred money is still an issue though. In my opinion, it's kind of like you're hiding the money that you're spending so that the luxury tax doesn't see you and you don't get penalties, which is bad. And it's illegal in actual America, but you can do it in MLB, which is kind of weird. Obviously, it's not illegal in MLB, but it's just a little bit of a weird concept because you are making it more unfair for the low market teams when the luxury tax is in place to help the low market teams in the first place. And even if you look at the Scrooge index, a good amount of the low market teams, at least the contending low market teams, do put a pretty solid percentage of their money back into their players. Again, the Dodgers still do it at a higher rate, but it's easier to do that when you're making more money, in my opinion. But again, they just care about winning, and that's what every fan base wants their owner to be like. So it's hard to fault them when they're the only owner that is doing their job. Well, also Steve Cohen and the Mets are doing their job as well, but the Dodgers are doing their job, and it's hard to fault them for doing the job that the fans beg the owners to do. But I think the MLB really needs to think long and hard about limiting the deferrals or something along those lines. Anyway, the Dodgers are insane at baseball and the other owners suck. That's all I have to say.